October 15, 1942. The murder.
11:47 p.m. Albert Romano, Italian mobster, age 42, was shot 3 times. Outside Small's Paradise nightclub, Harlem. He died instantly. 20 witnesses. Chaos. Screaming. Police arrived within minutes. Found the body. Found shell casings. Found nothing else. No weapon, no shooter. Just a dead mobster. And questions. Detective Frank Morrison took the case. Corrupt cop. On the mob's payroll for years. But this time, the mob wanted justice. Albert Romano was connected. Important. His death needed answering. Morrison needed a suspect. Fast. He chose Bumpy Johnson. Why Bumpy? Convenient. Powerful. Black. Easy to frame. Perfect scapegoat. Morrison planted evidence. Bumpy's gun, conveniently found near the scene. 3 witnesses.
All paid, all willing to lie, all saying they saw Bumpy shoot Romano. It was a complete fabrication, but it worked.
November 3rd, 1942. The arrest.
6 a.m. Bumpy Johnson was arrested. At his home, with Mamie. 20 cops. Battering ram. Excessive force. They dragged him out, in handcuffs. Mamie screaming. Neighbors watching. Bumpy, what's happening? I don't know. What did you do? Nothing. Then why? I don't know. But we'll figure it out. At the precinct, Morrison smiled. Bumpy Johnson, finally got you. For what? Murder. Albert Romano. I didn't kill him. We have witnesses. They're lying. We have your gun. That's not my gun. Found at the scene, with your fingerprints. Planted. Prove it. Bumpy couldn't. The evidence was too perfect, too complete, too manufactured, but impossible to disprove. He was charged. First-degree murder. Death penalty case. Trial set for December.
November 4:30, 1942. Preparing defense.
Bumpy hired the best. Attorney Samuel Leibowitz, famous defense lawyer, had won impossible cases, saved countless men from execution. But this case was different. The evidence was strong. The witnesses were convincing. The gun was damning. Samuel visited Bumpy, Sing Sing jail. They sat across a metal table. Tell me everything. About what? October 15th. Where were you at 11:47 p.m.? Home, with Mamie. Anyone else see you? No, just her. That's not enough. Wife's testimony isn't credible to juries. Why not? Because wives lie for husbands. Everyone knows that. Even when telling the truth? Especially then. So what do? We find the real killer. In 3 weeks? We have to. Otherwise, you're going to die.
December 1 to 15, 1942. The trial.
December 1st. Trial began. Manhattan Criminal Court. Judge Harold Carter presiding. Tough, conservative, death penalty supporter. Not ideal for Bumpy. Prosecution presented their case. Detective Morrison testified. We found Mr. Johnson's gun at the scene with his fingerprints and gunpowder residue. Clearly, he fired it recently. Samuel cross-examined. Detective, how do you know this is Mr. Johnson's gun? It's registered to him. Could someone else have used it? Theoretically, could someone have stolen it and used it to frame him? Objection, speculation, sustained. But Samuel planted the seed. Doubt, maybe. 3 witnesses testified. All said they saw Bumpy shoot Romano. All were convincing, all were lying, but the jury believed them.
Samuel cross-examined each. Can you describe what Mr. Johnson was wearing? Dark suit. What color? Dark. Black? Brown? I don't remember. You don't remember, but you remember his face, in the dark, from 50 feet away. I saw him. Under a streetlight. Yes. Which streetlight? The one near the club. There is no streetlight near the club. Small cracks, but not enough. The prosecution's case was strong. December 10th. Defense's turn. Bumpy testified. I didn't kill Albert Romano. I was home, with my wife, all night. Why would Detective Morrison frame you? I don't know. Maybe because I'm an easy target. Maybe because I'm black. Maybe because the real killer paid him. Objection. Speculation. Sustained. Mr. Johnson, stick to facts. I am.
The fact is, I didn't do this. Mamie testified. Bumpy was home all night. We had dinner, went to bed. He never left. Are you certain? Yes. Could he have left while you were sleeping? No. I would have known. How? I always know. The jury didn't believe her. A wife protecting her husband. Obviously. Samuel called character witnesses. Reverend Powell, Stephanie St. Clair, community leaders. All said Bumpy, despite his profession, wasn't a murderer, wasn't violent without reason, wouldn't kill a mobster, especially not publicly. Too risky? Too stupid. Bumpy was smart. This crime was dumb. Therefore, Bumpy didn't do it. Logical, but not convincing, to a jury that had already decided.
December 15th, 1942. The verdict.
After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty, first-degree murder. Bumpy showed no reaction. Mamie collapsed. Samuel closed his eyes. Judge Carter spoke. Mr. Johnson, you have been found guilty of the murder of Albert Romano. Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Yes. I didn't do this. I'm innocent. And someday, the truth will come out. And everyone in this courtroom will know that you executed an innocent man. Judge Carter was unmoved. I sentence you to death by electrocution at Sing Sing Prison on June 12, 1943, 6 months from today. May God have mercy on your soul. Court adjourned. Bumpy was led away, in chains, to death row, for a crime he didn't commit.
January to May 1943. Death row.
Bumpy spent 6 months in a cell, 8 feet by 6 feet, concrete, cold, isolated, death row, where men waited to die. He wasn't alone. 7 other condemned men, all waiting, all hoping, all knowing hope was unlikely. Samuel filed appeals, every legal avenue, every technicality, every argument. Judge Carter denied them all. The evidence was clear. The verdict was sound. The sentence was just. Appeal denied. Appeal denied. Appeal denied. By May, Samuel was desperate. We're running out of options. What's left? The governor. Thomas Dewey? Yes, he can commute your sentence to life in prison. Why would he? If we give him a reason. What reason? Proof you're innocent. We don't have proof. Then we find it. We have 3 weeks.
Then find it fast, because I'm not dying for something I didn't do.
May 15th, June 10th, 1943. The investigation.
Samuel hired private investigators, the best, former cops, ex-FBI, people who knew how to dig. Their job? Find the real killer. They started with Albert Romano. Who wanted him dead? Everyone. He was a mobster, made enemies, owed debts, betrayed partners. The list was long, but one name kept appearing: Ruby Thompson, Romano's mistress, age 28, beautiful, dangerous, volatile. They'd been fighting about money, about marriage, about other women. Witnesses said she'd threatened him multiple times. I'll kill you, Albert. You'll regret this. I'll make you pay. But Morrison never investigated her. Why? The investigators dug deeper, found financial records. Morrison had received $20,000 from an anonymous donor.
2 days after Romano's death. Coincidence? No. Payment. For framing Bumpy. For protecting Ruby. The investigators found Ruby in Chicago, living under a new name. Confronted her. We know you killed Albert Romano. I don't know what you're talking about. We have witnesses, evidence, financial records, proof that Morrison protected you, while Bumpy Johnson goes to the chair. They showed her photos of Bumpy, of death row, of the electric chair. An innocent man is going to die for your crime. Can you live with that? Ruby broke, started crying. I didn't mean to kill him. He was leaving me for another woman. After everything, after I gave him years, he was just leaving. So I shot him 3 times. And Morrison helped you cover it up.
He was Albert's friend, didn't want me caught, so he framed someone else, Bumpy Johnson. Yes, Ruby signed a confession, dated June 10th, 1943, 2 days before Bumpy's execution. Samuel rushed it to Governor Dewey, along with evidence of Morrison's corruption, the financial records, the witness statements, everything. This man is innocent. The real killer has confessed. You have to stop the execution. Governor Dewey read the confession, the evidence, then looked at Samuel. This is compelling, but I need to verify. We don't have time. The execution is in 2 days. Then I'll work fast, but I won't stop an execution without being certain. Samuel left, uncertain, afraid. 2 days. Would it be enough?
June 11th, 1943, the day before.
Bumpy's last full day alive. He spent it saying goodbye. Mamie visited, for 3 hours, maximum allowed. They sat, holding hands, through bars. I'm sorry. For what? For not protecting you. This isn't your fault. It feels like it. It's Morrison's fault, the jury's fault, the system's fault, not yours. What if the governor doesn't call? Then I die, and you move on. I can't move on. You have to. Promise me. Mamie, promise. I can't. Please, for me. Promise you'll live, after I'm gone. She was crying. I promise. Good. Because this life, it's not worth dying over. You deserve better. Better than me. Better than this. Go somewhere safe. Somewhere peaceful. Find happiness. That's all I want. They held hands until time ran out.
Guards took Bumpy back to his cell. Last meal, steak, rare, mashed potatoes, cornbread, ice cream. He ate it all, slowly, savoring his last tastes. Father Murphy came for last rites. Are you ready, my son? No, no one ever is. Are you afraid of dying? Yes, that's human. But are you at peace? With my life? No. With your soul? I don't know. Then let's pray. They prayed for forgiveness, for mercy, for justice, for truth. When they finished, Father Murphy asked, "Did you do it? Kill Romano?" "No. I believe you. Thank you. That means something. It means everything." At 10 p.m., Warden Mitchell came. "It's time to move you to the holding cell near the chair." Bumpy stood, walked to the room where he'd die in 2 hours.
Unless a miracle happened. At 11 p.m., Samuel called. Still no word from the governor. Keep hoping. I'm trying. Bumpy, I'm so sorry. Don't be. You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. Sometimes it's not about enough. It's about trying. You tried. That matters. At 11:30 p.m., they shaved his head for the electrodes, for the execution. At 11:45 p.m., they walked him to the chair, strapped him in, arms, legs, chest, head. Father Murphy read the last rites. Warden Mitchell asked, "Any last words?" "Yes, I'm innocent, and I forgive everyone who put me here, because they didn't know, but God knows, and that's enough." The executioner prepared, checked the equipment, the voltage, the connection.
At 11:58 p.m., Warden Mitchell raised his hand, ready to signal the execution. Then, the phone rang. June 12, 1943, 11:59 p.m. The call.
The phone rang in the execution chamber, 1 minute before midnight, 1 minute before Bumpy Johnson would die. Warden Mitchell lowered his hand, walked to the phone, picked it up. "This is Warden Mitchell." "Yes, Governor." "I understand." "Yes, sir." He hung up, turned to Bumpy, still strapped in the chair.
The execution is stayed. What? Governor Dewey has ordered a halt, pending investigation. You're being returned to your cell. Bumpy couldn't speak, couldn't process. 1 minute. He'd been 1 minute from death. Father Murphy crossed himself. Thank God, thank God. Guards unstrapped Bumpy, helped him stand. His legs barely worked. Shaking, weak, relief and shock. They walked him back, to his cell, alive, somehow, impossibly.
Alive. At 12:15 a.m., Samuel called. Bumpy, did you hear? I heard. Ruby Thompson confessed to everything. Morrison's corruption is exposed. The evidence is overwhelming. Dewey can't ignore it. So what happens now? Full investigation. Could take weeks. But you're alive. That's what matters. For now. What does that mean? It means Dewey could still let the execution proceed if he decides the evidence isn't enough. So I'm not free? No. But you're not dead. That's progress. Bumpy sat in his cell, not celebrating, not crying, just breathing, in, out, alive. That was enough.
June 13th to 30th, 1943. The investigation.
Governor Dewey assigned a special investigator, District Attorney Frank Hogan, honest, thorough, incorruptible. Hogan's job, verify Ruby Thompson's confession, investigate Morrison's corruption, determine if Bumpy Johnson was innocent. Hogan worked fast. June 13th to 15th, interviewed Ruby Thompson. She repeated her confession, on the record, under oath, with lawyers present. I killed Albert Romano, October 15th, 1942, outside Small's Paradise. I shot him 3 times with a .38 revolver because he was leaving me for another woman, after I gave him everything. Why did you let Bumpy Johnson take the blame? Because Detective Morrison told me to. He said he'd protect me if I stayed quiet. He planted Bumpy's gun, paid witnesses to lie.
Built the case against Bumpy while hiding my involvement. Why? Because Morrison was Albert's friend, didn't want me punished, wanted someone else to pay, so he chose Bumpy. June 16th to 20. Investigated Morrison's finances, found the $20,000 payment from a shell company, traced it to Romano's family. They'd paid Morrison to frame someone, anyone, for Albert's staff. They didn't care who, just wanted justice, or what looked like justice. Morrison had delivered by destroying an innocent man. June 21st to 25th. Interviewed the 3 witnesses who testified against Bumpy. All admitted, under pressure, that Morrison paid them $5,000 each to say they saw Bumpy shoot Romano, even though they didn't, even though they weren't there, even though it was all a lie. Why did you do it? For the money. And because Morrison said Bumpy was guilty anyway. Said it didn't matter. We were just confirming what everyone knew. But Bumpy was innocent. We didn't know that. Not then. Do you know it now? Yes. And I'm sorry.
June 26th, 1943. Hogan's report.
Hogan delivered his findings to Governor Dewey. 100 pages. Exhaustive. Conclusive. Summary. Bumpy Johnson is innocent. Ruby Thompson killed Albert Romano. Detective Frank Morrison framed Bumpy Johnson through planted evidence, false witnesses, corrupted investigation. The conviction is invalid. The death sentence is unjust. Recommendation: immediate exoneration, full pardon, criminal charges against Morrison, and compensation for wrongful conviction. Dewey read the report twice, then called a press conference, June 27, 1943, Governor's Mansion, Albany, 50 reporters. I have reviewed the evidence in the case of Bumpy Johnson, convicted of murdering Albert Romano. The evidence is clear. Mr. Johnson is innocent.
The real killer, Ruby Thompson, has confessed. The investigating detective, Frank Morrison, fabricated evidence and corrupted the judicial process. This is a miscarriage of justice of the highest order. Therefore, I am issuing a full pardon
for Bumpy Johnson, effective immediately. He will be released from Sing Sing today. Additionally, I am ordering the arrest of Detective Frank Morrison and Ruby Thompson for murder, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. They will face trial for their crimes. Finally, I am ordering a review of all cases investigated by Morrison to determine if other innocent people were wrongfully convicted. This cannot happen again. Justice delayed is justice denied.
But justice corrected is still justice. Mr. Johnson, on behalf of the state of New York, I apologize. The reporters erupted with questions. Dewey walked away, didn't answer. The message was sent.
June 27, 1943, 3 p.m. Release.
Bumpy Johnson walked out of Sing Sing prison, free man, after 8 months on death row for a crime he didn't commit. Mamie was waiting, ran to him, held him, cried, "You're alive." "I'm alive. I thought I lost you." "You almost did, but you didn't." "No, I didn't." Samuel was there. "Congratulations. Thank you for everything. I was just doing my job. You saved my life. That's more than a job." Samuel smiled. "What will you do now?" "Live differently than before." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I know this. Life is too short to waste on hate, on revenge, on violence. I got a second chance. I'm not wasting it." "Good, because you deserve it." They drove back to Harlem. Hundreds of people lined the streets, cheering, celebrating Bumpy's return. Bumpy waved,
Smiled. But inside, he was changed. 8 months facing death changes a man, makes him think about what matters, about legacy, about purpose. That night, Bumpy sat with Mamie, at home, in bed, together, for the first time in 8 months. "What are you thinking about?" "About how close I came to dying, for nothing, for someone else's crime. It's over now." "Is it?" "You're free. The charges are dropped." "Physically, yes. But mentally? I'm still there, in that cell, in that chair, waiting to die. That will take time to heal. I know, but I'll help." "Thank you." "For what?" "For waiting, for believing, for fighting. I never doubted, not once. Even when I did, especially then." Bumpy held her, and for the first time in 8 months, felt safe.
July 1943. The Trials.
Ruby Thompson's trial, July 15, 1943. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, sentenced to 25 years to life at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. She showed no remorse, told the judge, "I'd do it again. Albert deserved it for leaving me, for betraying me. I don't regret killing him, only getting caught." The judge was unmoved. "You also don't regret that an innocent man almost died for your crime. That shows a disturbing lack of conscience." Ruby shrugged. "He didn't die though, did he? Only because the truth came out at the last minute. That's luck, not justice. Maybe, but he's alive, and I'm going to prison, so everyone got what they deserved." The courtroom was silent, shocked by her callousness.
Detective Frank Morrison's trial, July 25 to 30, 1943. He pleaded not guilty, claimed he was just doing his job, that he believed Bumpy was guilty, that the evidence pointed to Bumpy, that he didn't frame anyone. The prosecution destroyed him, showed the $20,000 payment, showed the witness payments, showed the planted gun, showed everything. Morrison was convicted. Evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, accessory to murder, sentenced to 15 years, Sing Sing prison, ironically, the same place he'd sent Bumpy to die. Morrison broke down. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was weak. They offered me money. I took it. I didn't think. I didn't care. I just wanted the money. And Bumpy seemed guilty anyway."
"So I helped make the case. I didn't know he was innocent." The judge interrupted. "Whether you knew or not is irrelevant.
You corrupted the justice system. You nearly caused an execution of an innocent man. There is no excuse for what you've done. Morrison was led away, in chains, to prison, where he belonged.
August 1943. Compensation. The state of New York offered Bumpy compensation for wrongful conviction, for 8 months on death row, for nearly being executed. The amount? $50,000. Bumpy refused it. Why? Samuel asked. Because money doesn't fix this. It's compensation for time lost. I don't want compensation. I want change. What kind of change? Legal reform. So this doesn't happen to anyone else. What do you propose? 3 things. First, mandatory review of all death penalty cases by independent investigators before execution to catch mistakes. Second, severe penalties for police corruption, especially evidence tampering. Make it a federal crime, punishable by 20 years minimum. Third, compensation for exonerees, not optional, mandatory.
Anyone wrongfully convicted gets $100,000 per year of wrongful imprisonment. Automatic, no negotiation. Samuel wrote it down. I'll present this to the governor. Good. And if he doesn't implement it? Then I'll make it public. Embarrass him. Force him to act. Because this isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone who might face what I faced. They deserve protection. They deserve justice. Governor Dewey, to his credit, listened, implemented all 3 reforms within a year. The Bumpy Johnson Act, as it became known, changed New York's criminal justice system forever.
September 1943. Moving forward. Bumpy returned to Harlem, to his life, but different, changed. He still ran his operations, still protected his territory, still commanded respect, but with a new philosophy. Less violence, more community focus, more legitimate business, more investment in people. Why the change? People asked. Because I almost died, for nothing. That makes you think about legacy, about what you leave behind. I don't want to be remembered as just a criminal. I want to be remembered as someone who helped, who built, who changed things. That's worth more than fear, more than power, more than money. By December 1943, 6 months after his release, Bumpy had opened 3 legitimate businesses, funded 2 community programs,
Donated $50,000 to youth education. Created a legal defense fund for wrongfully accused people in Harlem. It wasn't redemption, not completely, but it was progress, and progress was enough.
Epilogue. 1968. 25 years later.
July 7th, 1968. Bumpy Johnson died. Heart attack. Age 63. At his funeral, Reverend Rowell mentioned the execution. In 1943, Bumpy Johnson faced death, strapped to an electric chair. 1 minute from execution, for a crime he didn't commit. That experience changed him, made him think about justice, about fairness, about using power for good. The Bumpy Johnson Act, passed in 1944, has saved 17 lives. 17 people wrongfully convicted, exonerated before execution because of Bumpy's advocacy. That's legacy, not the crime, not the violence. The lives saved, the system changed, the justice restored. Bumpy Johnson was many things, but in his best moment, he was nearly executed, and instead of seeking revenge, he sought reform.
That's the man we remember today. In the audience, Samuel Leibowitz, now 76, retired, listened, and remembered. That phone call, at 11:59 p.m., that saved a life and changed a system. That was justice, real justice, and it mattered. In 2025, 57 years after Bumpy's death, the Bumpy Johnson Act still exists, still saves lives, still proves that one man, facing death, can change everything. If he chooses reform over revenge, justice over retribution, progress over punishment, that's legacy. That's redemption. That's hope.
If this story of last-minute justice, wrongful conviction, and systemic reform moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe the system can change when people demand it. Share this with someone who needs to hear about the man who stopped his own execution with 1 minute left. What would you do with a second chance at life? Let me know in the comments. And remember, justice delayed is justice denied, but justice corrected is still justice. Bumpy Johnson proved that at 11:59 p.m., 1 minute from death, and changed the system forever.